Our first guest tonight would like you to pay attention not just for whom you'll vote for mayor, but also for your school board trustee next week. And joining us now to tell us why, here's Howard Goodman, who is not seeking re-election as a trustee with the Toronto District School Board. Howard, as I welcome you tonight, we just want to remind everybody that you can be part of this conversation. With a week to go before municipal elections around the province, we want to hear from you as to your number one issue in the coming election. So chime in now on Twitter, use the hashtag AgendaTVO. I want to ask you this right off the top. Municipal election turnout is usually pretty poor to begin with, and for school board trustee, even worse. How come?
When we don't get any publicity. People are driven by issues that come forward. They're driven by names. You know, if you know Ford and Chow and Tory, you know who to vote for. And you get engaged with them and you read the stories every day. I can't remember really the last time any of the papers or TV stations really focused on the 22 races in Toronto, let alone the probably 30 or 40 in the rest of the province.
So a lack of attention from the media means nobody knows who you people are, meaning when they go and they look at their ballot and they see all these names, they think, who are these folks?
Right.
That's the
and
problem.
Typically, the same thing happens with councillors to a less extent, because people go in for mayor, and if you look at the results, you find about a 20% drop-off from mayor to councillor to trustee.
20% each time?
No, 20% overall. It's
overall.
per 10 and 10.
Okay. It may be as well a factor of we don't know what you people do. So why don't you tell us, what did you do as a trustee?
So we do three things, and the job is really divided in three pieces. The most visible part is when a constituent calls and says, I need help with another kid in the school who's harassing their child, help with a teacher who isn't giving the support, particularly with special needs, children, autistic and otherwise, there's a question of what sort of support is provided. It's never enough.
And theoretically, you know where the bodies are buried and you can help.
Right, and so what we do is we mediate. And we go through and we we know the people, we have some credibility with any luck with the staff members. And so when we say this, we think this is happening, what can you do? We have this suggestion, and then it comes through.
Number two.
Number two is providing policy direction to the board and providing, probably more importantly, providing oversight of what the staff's doing with those policy directions and provincial law and regulation. And that's pretty boring. It's not, one year I tried to campaign on that piece, it didn't work and I changed after a few days because people aren't really interested. It's hard to explain. It's not a 15-second soundbite.
Right.
So there's that piece. And again, the most important piece on that, I believe, is the oversight of staff performance.
Number three.
And the third piece is challenging the province, because the province sometimes puts in regulations and policies that are not good for students. They're doing it for other reasons. They have all these other portfolios to balance. They have other political considerations. They don't really consult school boards, put in these policies, and someone has to react and communicate to the public that this is happening and this is wrong.
And that's your job.
And that's part of our job.
Would that be true, those three things, would that be true for basically every school board in the province?
Yeah.
It would be, okay. Now, most people find it tough enough, I think, everybody's leading busy lives and they find it tough enough to keep up on their respective mayor's race. Maybe if it's a high profile contest, they can keep track of that, but then as you point out, city councillor is a bit of a drop off. Do you have some sympathy for the fact that it is tough to educate yourself on all of the nuanced differences in position among the different trustee candidates in your ward? Is that fair to say?
I have complete sympathy. The people who tend to pay attention are the parents, particularly of young kids. So if you've got a child, let's say between kindergarten and grade 4 or 5, you tend to be very interested in what's happening with the trustee race. Your children are young. They need a lot of support and nurturing. And so you're concerned about what the schools are like and who the trustees are. When you get past grade 5, they become more independent and frankly less cute. And they won't accept the nurturing. My kids are 17 and 20. And I've lost the ability to nurture them in the way I would like. a long time ago. And so it's typically the people who pay attention. It's actually not preschool parents, because they haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
And certainly it's not post-graduation parents. But the core is sort of K to 5.
Well, then that does raise the question. If you don't have a child in the public school system or in the Roman Catholic publicly funded school system, why should you give a damn at all about who the trustee is?
Our schools are the foundation of our society. If we don't get our schools right, we have problems everywhere. Our economy 20 years from now won't be good, because the children who become adults won't have the skills or the motivation to perform in the economy, get good jobs, and contribute. If we don't create a culture of inclusiveness, of understanding between, Toronto has a huge number of different communities, and if we don't help our students, help the children of the city understand that everybody's a person and everybody has value, and break down the stereotypes and biases that they have, we're going to have by far a less safe city.
I hear you, Howard, but you know what? I can just see people watching this right now saying, wait a second, I voted in a provincial election last June in which you wanted me to know about the leaders and their platforms, and then the local MPP candidate who was running in my constituency. Okay, did that. Now, 6 months later, we're into a municipal election. I got to know who the mayors are. I got to know who the councillors are. Going to be a federal election next year. You want me to be up to scratch on all of that? Excuse me, it's too much. I just don't care enough to deal with my school board trustee.
So I'm sympathetic with that. The question you asked was, why should people care? Not whether they care, because typically that's a hard message to get across, because it's a very large message. There's a significant difference between school board and provincial and federal, because if a party forms a government, in fact, they get to pursue their agenda, particularly if they have a majority. Right? This is what they said they're going to do. Hopefully, that's what they do. School board trustees, there are no parties. We're in Toronto, anyways. We're 22 individuals. We each have our own sense of what we. I'm not even going as far as agendas. A sense of what we'd like to do. The critical thing there is not actually to follow platforms, because there isn't really any platform. The thing that I think I would encourage people to do is follow the skills, because this is a $3 billion operation. We're looking after 250,000 children in about 550 locations with about 30,000 staff. That's more students than any 6 universities in Ontario put together. It's about the same size as a large bank. To govern that, we need people with skills. We need accountants, and we need lawyers, and we need engineers, and we need people who understand mental health issues, which is a big thing. And that's not platform stuff. That's the skills that you come in on. And you need somebody who understands the community well and can relate to parents and help them overcome the problems that come up. But you also need people who provide the oversight to staff and can challenge. 11 years.
You were 11 years a trustee.
Yeah.
How come you're not running again?
One, I've only planned on running 2 terms. I ran a third, so more than enough. But also the petty politics and both at the board and at the provincial level wears on me. I'm not particularly a political person. I've never joined a political party. I don't have any interest in that. And a lot of people who run do. So they have this political aura, and they like question period, and they like that. And that's wearing on me.
Well, can I read something here?
Sure.
This is from the Toronto Star from last month, in which an audit was done of the Toronto school board system, and they talked about a culture of fear, did the auditors. Let me read this excerpt here. An Ernst & Young audit last December found $1.3 million in unauthorized raises for senior staff, and noted there was a, quote, culture of fear among staff about speaking out when problems arise. That audit also criticized trustees for interfering in day-to-day operations of the school board. Board employees complained earlier this year that they had been subjected to, quote, abusive, threatening, and insulting comments by some board members. 9 of the 22 trustees themselves said they felt threatened by some of their colleagues. The situation got so bad in March that former board chair Chris Bolton asked police to attend TDSB meetings in response to threatening behavior by a trustee. Is this some of the stuff you're not going to be sorry to see in your rearview mirror?
I'm actually not sorry to see the stuff that causes that. And the thing that causes that, and you missed I think the important part of the Ernst & Young report, and though again it gets into this administrative, organizational stuff. But the Ernst & Young report identified a whole series of transactions that should have been brought to board that were ignored and were hidden, basically. It identified a large number of sole source contracts that shouldn't have been sole sourced. It identified a significant number of conflict of interest transactions. And those are really serious. And when those don't get dealt with, and we haven't heard from Ernst & Young, we've been trying, certainly on December 10th, I raised the issue and I've been raising it throughout. We still haven't received permission from the minister to talk to Ernst & Young. So we don't know the details.
Why do you need their permission?
Because the minister was the client.
Okay.
Right, and so professional ethics from the accounting thing, we haven't even really asked the minister to give us permission. We did in a small way. But if that's almost 11 months ago. And for us to sit not knowing, this goes back to the oversight issue, if we don't understand what went on, and it's not about the culture of fear, it's about the improper transactions, if we don't understand that, we have a problem. And that actually, the failure to provide adequate oversight, the resistance of some people to allow the rest of the board to provide adequate oversight creates really significant tension between those who want to see it and those who don't want it to happen.
Did you find, though, a culture of fear at the board in your time there?
No.
You did not find it?
No, not in the way you've expressed it. The culture is one of, and this applies to both staff, mostly staff to staff, but also there are a few trustees who do go around and basically threaten to have a principal removed from a school.
And they do that because?
They believe they have a mandate to do so.
Do they?
No.
So that's interfering?
That's certainly interfering.
So
and
Ernst & Young is right about that?
That's not the context Ernst & Young was talking about.
Okay.
Ernst & Young in that case was talking, because they didn't look at that level, they were talking about, and specifically one or more trustees inducing staff to break the proper purchasing laws, processes.
Do you think the school board is dysfunctional?
All committees, all organizations, without a cohesive, right? We're all 22 individual elected people. We all have some level of, let's say, inflated ego. You don't run for office unless you're a certain type of personality. And so all of us fit in that territory. So we believe we should be advancing our agenda and our beliefs. That creates controversy and sometimes heated arguments.
How many hours a week did you spend on this job on average?
Let's say 40.
40. So it's like a full-time job.
For me, it was.
Right.
I don't have another. I'm fortunate in life. I don't need to earn other money.
What'd you get paid to do this job?
$25,000.
$25,000 to do it.
For me, it was a full-time job.
There must have been. I mean, you see where I'm getting at here. Who needs it? Who wants it? I mean, I know it's an important job, but do you? I mean, there must have been days when you thought to yourself, what the hell am I doing here?
Well, certainly lately, I've said that. That's why I'm not running. But, well, to start off, the first term, I only made $5,000, and I was paying more in childcare to cover my children who were young at the time at meetings than I was getting paid. So it was a net loss doing that. And the reason I ran is because my family experienced some problems with the way one of the schools was running with my child in it. And we're a privileged family. We have all the resources we need. We're completely comfortable in the culture. Our first language is English. It's really easy for us to navigate the system. We weren't able to. We had to provide outside resources to help our son. And I realized that if I couldn't do it, professional, good socioeconomic status, if I couldn't move the small part of my system, the principal in the school, to do the right thing for my son. What would happen to a family that doesn't have English, that's afraid of confronting authority, that's working 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, who's going through all these cultural adjustments? They would not have been able to handle it at all, and that's why I went forward and ran as trustee in order to provide that support.
That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, which is a less sympathetic to trustee side of the coin, is you folks have some discretion, you have some discretionary expenditure powers, and you're not open about it. There's no obligation to, for example, post expenses online so that the citizens of the city can see what you spend your money on. What do you think of that point?
I think it's valid. I think the way it's being presented misses the point, because it's not about receipts. You know, people want receipts posted. I can put in a receipt, and the receipt, any receipt that I put in will be a legitimate receipt. The question really is, did the expenditure enhance my ability to do the job of promoting student achievement and well-being? That's my job.
Who judges that?
Well, and that should be the public. But the thing, in posting receipts, you don't get that commentary. Right. What I would prefer, and I've been advocating for, is that the expenses get detailed, doesn't need receipts, but that an explanation as to why the expense was incurred is presented publicly.
Put that online.
Put that online.
So people can make their own judgments.
Yes, because it's not about the receipt. It's
Who's
about the
opposed to
explanation.
that? That seems like common sense. Who doesn't like that idea?
The people who are stuck on putting on receipts, right?
Okay.
Because for example, one of the expenses that the expense audit didn't pick up was one of my colleagues a couple of years ago spent about $2,000 buying lanyards with his business card, laminated business card on it, to give out to every graduating student. So grade 6 and grade 8 and grade 12. My mind, no value to that at all. That receipt was there and would have been fine. The thing that would have caught people's attention was whatever explanation he would have put in. And one of the things, for example, that has got people's attention is this supposed trip to Israel, which sounds in the press like it's a junket and a pleasure trip. And in fact, it was something that staff encouraged. It was an international conference dealing with intercultural conflict, and certainly Israel's not a bad place to learn about that. Mm-hmm. The conference went from early morning to late at night. They went all over Israel and the West Bank. They met with every aspect of society. The people on that came from around the world. We had students and teachers on that. And our staff, because this is a problem for TDSB, given the number of different cultures we have, the staff, senior staff, encouraged Jerry Gershon to go on this trip. She actually didn't want to go originally.
So it had value, you think?
It had great value, and not only that, senior staff said, please, please, please go. And it's being played out in the press as something that was irresponsible and inappropriate. So if that was just an expense to Israel, it wouldn't have looked so good. If the explanation was that this is why I went, and she was completely open at the time and people applauded her for it,
then it makes more sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha. Howard, enjoy election night. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to win this time.
Well, I'm endorsing somebody, so I'm worried about whether he wins or not.
Good enough. Thanks for coming into Leaside tonight and helping us out with this.
My pleasure.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.